Everybody, ooh, I guess you do hear us okay.
Are these working? Yeah.
All right. So what's going on, everybody? Thank you for coming. We literally got this together a few days ago, so this is going to be exciting. First, DC Podfest and first DC Podfest panel on diversity, which had the title that I did not come up with, but captured a whole bunch of attention, which is "Not All Podcasters Are White," and all of that. Let me just do a quick intro for myself, and I have our fellow panelists and awesome podcasters do their intros, and we'll just get into some conversation and talk, and then get into some questions. My name is Mary Nichols. Since that also was something I didn't expect, my government name is out to everybody, but it's all good. Most folks in the podcasting land and radio land know me as DJ Fusion of the syndicated Fusebox radio broadcast, where we go ahead and cover all types of topics from politics to pop culture and everything in between, along mixes of old school and new school music, Indian mainstream and hip-hop, soul, funk, jazz, reggae, and more. I've been doing this since 1998, podcasting since around 2004, 2005, and it's been awesome to see the growth with multiple populations in terms of using podcasting as indie media, and these fine guys right here have really been doing it up. I see them at a lot of events. I subscribe to all of their shows, and I think we all have unique experiences to talk about in terms of the podcasting realm. So whoever wants to introduce themselves first, let's go on right ahead and keep it moving.
Okay, cool. Does this work? Does this work? All right, it works. Phenom Black. I started a podcast called Where's My 40acres.com. It originally was supposed to be for indie hip-hop music because people were saying hip-hop was dead, and I was calling BS on that. So I started it with a couple of friends, and it kind of blossomed into urban culture, indie culture, some nerd stuff, some television things, and right now we're at, I think, our 450th episode, and we're consistent every week. Wednesday, we drop a show Thursday morning around 7 a.m., and we're probably one of the most ratchet podcasts you would ever listen to. It's a lot of black struggle talk on our show, for sure.
I can agree with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a fact.
I'm Chris. I actually started, my website was theinsanityreport.com. Started that back in 2005. Started podcasting, I believe, into 2007, 2008. And the podcast was called The Insanity Check. In 2013, I kind of consolidated everything because we were expanding to way more stuff. We were doing movie reviews, TV show reviews. So now we are running the site movietrailerreviews.net. I'm kind of creating this network, the MTR network, which covers our movie reviews and TV show reviews. He does movie reviews with me. We do that. Also have a two new free shows, the Character Corner. Myself and Deepam, we talk about different DC Marvel characters to give their background on them. And we have a new one, the Super Tuesday Recap, where we recap The Flash and Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. on Wednesday. It's a live show we do, and everybody likes to do that. And then I have a premium network where we have 5 different shows. We'll get into that later. But yeah, so I have 8 total shows, and it's very exhausting, but I love doing it. So
I understand that. My name is Jay. So I guess I'm like the youngest person here as far as when I've been podcasting. You guys are like in the 90s. That's crazy.
Damn,
so
okay.
No,
you make me feel nice and old, Jay.
No, that's all right. That's all right.
Things that are not compliments.
So I've been podcasting since 2011. So our main show is called The Nerdpocalypse, and so it's now expanded from just one show into an entire network. We have 8 shows as well, so I understand Chris's heartache. We do film reviews, so we often do film reviews, at the same venue.
We're at the same place.
Yeah. Film reviews. We have a show dedicated just to video games. We have a show dedicated solely to anime. We have a show dedicated to just black films. It's called Black on Black Cinema, which is our largest show. And that one is just about black American films or films in the African diaspora, where we do sort of long film review. We also have a politics show and a Love Advice show, which is a premium show, and then another premium show, which is sort of slice of life stories surrounding each episode of Seinfeld that I do with one of my co-hosts, which has been a blast. But that's definitely premium because we tell stories that are incredibly embarrassing.
You got to put that behind the paywall.
Yeah, you
all
have
the
to.
time.
If you're going to hear it, you need to pay money to hear it. But yeah, I've been doing that since 2011, and it's been a blast. It's a lot of work, but it's been a blast.
All right, cool. So lots of experience here and from lots of different angles. One of the things when I was thinking about even trying to get a podcast like this together was I think we all kind of came into podcasting at a time where it was still quote unquote relatively new before this big outburst of podcasts are a thing, like before Serial was a thing, before let's say even the concept of podcast networks were a thing. Like there was a time where even with like quote unquote black or urban podcast, there wasn't a loudspeakers network, there wasn't a Apocalypse network and all of that type of stuff. I know especially for those of people who are new into podcasting and things, like let's start general, then we'll get like into some real specific stuff. What would you have liked to have had in terms of somebody helping you like craft a podcast, whether it was like tech help or support or whatever have you? Like I know from my experience being able to literally just talk to somebody is a miracle compared to back in the day where it was like, oh, you're putting a show on the computer, which again, I'm not old, it's just technology and all of that. Like, oh, that's cute. Like for somebody who wants to get into it right now and they're like, hey, I have a voice and I want to like make it happen, like what type of basic advice would you give them?
If somebody wanted to get into it now versus when we got into it, because everybody on my show is in a different area. So I have a host in Atlanta, I have a host in Virginia, and a host in Tennessee. And our biggest problem was, okay, how can I get all of y'all on the call at the same time and we're not feedback or talking over each other? And I jerry-rigged something that now is customary in the podcast world. But now if you wanted to start one, you need Audacity, you need a computer, a mic, Audacity, internet, and SoundCloud. Because a lot of these platforms have podcast-ready platforms already in place. You don't have to do what we did. We did Podomatic and lip sync, and like places that were podcast shows continue to grow. Your archive builds. Podomatic used to get me back in the day because they would get us for the amount of people. Bandwidth used to kill us because we would do a show, we would get 500 listeners. And it would be like, okay, that's cool. And then we'd do a show about Ray J and his ridiculousness, and we'd get 1,000 listeners, and all of a sudden we'd kill our bandwidth.
The day for me was the day we all got on and we did the Red Tails review. I looked at they shut us down after 2 days because we don't want the bandwidth.
They just tell you no.
Yeah.
And you just be like, no more people can listen to your greatness. I'm like, okay.
So that was such a struggle back then. Podomatic was.
You had to go in your pocket a lot. And now with things like a SoundCloud, I think they give you it's unlimited bandwidth
for $15
like $15 a month. Yeah. That's amazing. Like,
they're not even the cheapest, to be honest. I think Podbean is $8 a month for unlimited bandwidth and unlimited.
For me, I go to SoundCloud because a lot of black podcasts seem to be coming out on Sound. The Read is on SoundCloud. Was it Loudspeakers on SoundCloud?
Yeah,
a lot of those because you can build a page for your audio on SoundCloud. So it's perfect for a podcast.
Yep.
For me, I would think for anybody trying to get in, because right now everybody's trying to do podcasting now. It's like the thing everybody wants to do, and everybody's worried about oversaturation, but it's one of the things I'm never worried about, because my thing is consistency. So many people say they want to do a podcast, and you find out they've done one show every 2 months. I'm not worried. Like, you have to be dedicated. Like, everybody wants to do a podcast, but nobody wants to do a podcast. Like, to do a podcast is work, and nobody understands the work that we go into to do. Like, we do our Super Tuesday recap for The Flash and Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. Wednesday night at 9:30. After I get done recording that, I have to go then edit it and put it up, and I have to do all this work. I'm not going to bed until midnight, maybe 1 o'clock. Most people aren't trying to do that. And so, like, the amount of shows we have, like I said, I have 5 premium shows that I then have to schedule. I have to then also take care of, when people, I had an issue this morning. Somebody sent me an email this morning, 2 o'clock in the morning. They didn't get their account created. So I have to then work on that. It's a lot of work. And I don't think a lot of people who go into this, everybody wants to start because they just want to sit down and talk with your friends. Like, when I first started podcasting, that's what it was. It was me. We had a show. She came up with this name. She's my best friend. She's half Korean. Her name was Rice. And it was Chris and Rice. And, like, we did the show because it was just the two of us, and we would just talk. And I didn't care about anything. I didn't care about social media. I didn't care about getting the show out. I didn't care about quality. I just did it. It turned out people started listening to us, so then I actually had to start working on consistency, actually being professional. So I think a lot of people have to realize, what do you want to do? Are you just trying to get onto do a show with your friends and you're just, talking shit, and that's all you're doing? Or do you actually want to have a show? And I think so many people don't actually ask themselves that question. And so they get into it. Like I saw another show that started about a year ago. Their last show was like a month ago. Because consistency, they can't do it. You're not.
And that's fine. Podcasting is your own avenue, man. Mm-hmm. You create your own lane. But people are not. It's going to be pretty hard for you to get listeners if you have one show and nothing for them to look forward to for another month.
Exactly.
For me, starting out, unless you put a lot of production value, unless you're doing something like Criminal, where you're gathering interview notes and you have breaks in between your songs, and you can just tell like 5 hands were involved in the creation of this great listening experience. If you and your friends are just sitting down and shooting the shit and talking, then you need to be doing that regularly enough. It doesn't need to be every week or every day, but maybe every 2 weeks, something like that. And then you have to, compensate time away with length of your show. How you're going to put it out. We do album reviews. We used to try to do them every week. It's impossible with the amount of music that comes out and the amount of music we listen to. Mm-hmm. So now we have to kind of set aside time to go, okay, we're going to review 6 albums right now that we've been listening to for the last month. And then you have to put them out like that because people want to hear what you have to say once they get a taste of it if you give them a good product. So now we have people who bug us. Did y'all review this album? Did y'all review this album? And I'm like, we work. I work 40 hours a week too. Like podcasting is not subsidized for me. Like I have to pay for y'all to listen to us at the moment. So but it's fun. Like for me, it's fun. That's why I do it. I can't not do it.
It's like, you're talking about when Chris mentioned the sort of saturation idea. It's kind of funny because I look at podcasting the same way as I looked at blogging a couple of years ago. Everybody wanted to have a blog. Everybody's going to have their own blog. It's so easy, it's so easy to start. You go to blogger.com, everybody has one. But there are only a couple people who kept that consistency, that moved out of that, sort of out of the crowds, and then stood at the top and was like, okay, a Tim Ferriss or those kind of guys. So it takes a level of dedication, serious dedication. Like Phenom said, you work 40 hours a week, then you come home and podcast. I mean, right now I'm doing basically 3 full-time jobs.
You went to school.
Yeah, I'm in grad school, podcasting and working 40 hours a week. So I'm exhausted, and I'm going to leave here and go back to doing schoolwork at home like an insane person. But that level of dedication is what it takes, no matter whether you're a black podcaster or any other podcaster. If you want to succeed on any level, consistency is king. You can have a show that's good, but if it only comes out every so often and people have this nebulous idea of when you guys put out content, it doesn't matter. If they know every Wednesday, every Friday, I'm going to get whatever data, even if it's every other Wednesday, then okay. Then they know what to expect.
I've skipped a few weeks. And I'm not going to lie, I kind of did it with a smile because I'm waiting for that email or that tweet or that Facebook post where somebody's like,
where's your podcast?
Hey, man, where's the show, man? I've been refreshing all day, man. I think my podcast app is broken. No, it's not broken. It's not broken.
I needed a break.
I don't need to contact Podcast Addict or Beyond Pod or iTunes app. Like, don't bug those people.
That happened because we do movie reviews. Everybody knows Fridays when the movies comes out. So if we don't get a screener, sometimes we're not going. So they've learned not to do screeners for like Transformer movies because they're not going to get good reviews from critics. So we don't get screeners for those. So if I don't come of a Transformer movie, hey, did you guys see that? No, I didn't go to see that. So you guys aren't going to go and see Transformer because we really want to hear your opinion on it. You're like, what we're going to say. You just want us to be upset. Yeah, you just want us to rip them. So yeah, that happens all the time. But I like that because at least people are listening. So.
Right. That's a good feeling to know that people actually care to listen to your babble.
Right.
Like, it's just sometimes I feel like I didn't say anything, and then people start quoting back to me things that when you said this on the show.
When did I say that?
When Deidre said this on the show. I don't remember any of what happened last night, and I wasn't even drunk, so I have no idea
I have blackouts
what
on
they're
the show.
talking about.
I have blackouts. I don't remember shit. I was like, wait, I said
That's the fun of podcasting.
I didn't say that. I didn't say that. No, you did. It was this one. I'm like, okay.
Now, that's actually segues right into the next thing I was going to get into. There's a good and bad with having a media platform that is based on the internet. You get to say whatever you want. People can also get to say whatever they want back to you. Yeah. And sometimes there is a sense of entitlement in regards to how people think that you should respond. I, myself, being both Black American and female, have gotten some very interesting responses at times from some of the commentary that we've done on the show, especially because it's my partner is a Black male, I'm a Black female, and there's times they're like, well, why didn't you check him when he said this, or why didn't you check her when she said that, or this, which is kind of funny because our show description is literally like, we are a Black podcast, and they're like, why are you talking about this Black stuff so much? It's too Black. And it's like, our pictures are actually out on the web, guys. We're nicely and chocolatey and all that. This is just how we roll. This kind of ties into a thing where I think that sometimes, not just from, I guess, quote unquote, mainstream America, but even our own niches, that sometimes people want to just place you into a box for whatever reason. Sometimes people are very rude in terms of trying to, quote unquote, tell you what your place is. How do y'all deal with that? I know for me, I'm quick on blocking. Like, I'll conversate with you for a slight moment, but I know Facebook, Twitter, and all of that, there's a block button for a reason.
You're missing opportunities, man.
Well, I rant, but I get tired of ranting at people. I can't educate all day ranting.
So three of my friends on my show, we all went to the same high school. We're from the same area. We grew up together. One of the co-hosts on the show, we actually went to college, stayed in the same dorm for 4 years. Okay, so he's like my brother. So we started this show, and all of us are college grads. We added a Black female voice to the show because we thought that was necessary for a hip-hop conversation. And she's more versed in it than we are. She's amazing. And she's college educated. We did a show one time where I talked about, I don't have to argue with you, I got degrees. And I was being serious. Like, I got college degrees. Don't talk to me like I'm stupid. That's ridiculous. I've educated myself. We actually had a person call into the show because we have a voicemail line, which is that's the first problem. We actually allow people to call in. And he
with
called,
no filter.
No filter. He calls in and he starts reading me the riot act about how I threw my degree in his face. And in the same week, I had people tweeting me going, oh my God, I didn't know you guys went to college. And I was like, I'm listening and I'm like, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing when we're talking on a podcast and you can't tell. And we've all named the universities we went to. But this guy was really upset that I talked about having a degree. So I read him the riot act. I tore him a new one. And he's now like a running gag on the show. We're like, oh, we got another John from Detroit on the show. And his name was John. He was from Detroit. And that happened 3 years ago. And we still say, you sound like John from Detroit. Like, that's what you sound like. He even called in and apologized. I didn't mean to say Black educated people are a problem. I was like, no. Sounded really upset that you never had a professor, it sounds like, at all in your life or extended your education. We don't knock anybody for not going to college. I don't think everybody needs to go to college. I think some people are really cool at vocational work or really cool at coming up with great ideas. We just happen to go. And I talked about it on the show, and for some reason that was a problem because at the time I think I was 27, so I'm 27 Black male, and that's not normal, I guess. That Black males might be educated. That's crazy to me, though. We got that from a random person whose friend told them to listen to our show. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
An older Black male, probably somebody I think in their late 30s or early 40s, called us out for sounding pompous, for being, while we're talking about hip hop. Like, I'm talking about how I listen to Kanye West, and I think his ratchet display of feeling like a king is the greatest thing ever. And then they're like, well, you can't talk about your degrees though, man. It's just rubbing your education in people's faces. I don't think that's a bad thing though, to sometimes look at people and go, okay, what you just said was kind of wrong, and you should up that your level of thinking, because that's not cool.
So yeah, I feel bad because people don't interact with me like that, but I think it's because of where my site started at. My site was started from the Insanity Report, and that's still my Twitter handle. It's the Insanity Report, and I guess I kind of have a reputation for not entertaining people and making fun of them when they do things like that to me.
That's such a nice way of saying that.
Yeah, it's a little
very nice way of saying it, actually.
So
notorious, I think.
Yeah, so people, like, I have been known to literally go and make a whole show just roasting people on that kind of stuff. So I don't actually get those kind of emails anymore. They might hit me on Twitter, but even that's never good for them. So I'm trying to soften my stance and open myself up to other things. But no, the truth of the matter is, like, there's certain things I just don't have tolerance for. And especially as being a black podcaster, and Mary, you talked about it. I mean, you're double minority. You're black and you're a woman. There's so many things I'm not going to entertain. I'm not going to entertain, and that can limit our audience, and it can turn people off. If I am not going to deal with, like, we have another friend, Rod, who's always people always hitting him with, like, the men's rights activist stuff and sexism and why are you...
The worst is when they attack his wife.
Oh, like they'll literally attack his wife.
Crazy.
They'll email him, "Hey man, love your show is great, but
your
I
wife
can't.
Annoying.
Yeah, I can't stand your wife's voice." And
or she talks too much.
Right, she talks too much.
Shout out to the black guy who tips, by the way.
And her accent. And I tell him, it's like, man, you're good because he still handles it. But I'm like, you're good because I would probably find a way to come through the computer screen and choke somebody. Like, I would spend an entire show roasting one person, but he's better at that than I am because I can't tolerate that. Like, I'll never be able to tolerate that. And there's certain things that I won't back down from, and I think it can affect especially minority or underrepresented podcasters, because there are a lot of people who will listen to a show that they don't agree with anything the person says, and their only sole thing is to try to trigger that person or to argue with them or something like that. And I'm quick to tell somebody, like, listen, I'd rather you not listen to my show.
I encourage it.
Yeah.
If you want to come after Deidre on our show, Miss Music Lover, I wholeheartedly encourage it because her ether is ridiculous. She's told people to go back to dropping the hash browns at Burger King before contacting her, and I've literally lost 9 lives watching her tear new ones into people for thinking that they could come at her any type of way because she represents the female voice on our show. And honestly, to me, she just represents a hip-hop voice on our show and makes it more diverse. But like you have a female co-host on your show.
Not anymore, but we did. We did. We didn't have, I mean, she's white, but we never really experienced not so much any negative comments in that regard, but sort of like weird, like inappropriate sexual comments and stuff. It's like, really? Like, okay, that's not okay. What we get a lot of times, so like we break the stereotype that black folks are really religious generally, and we're not. We're, except for one guy, all of us are atheists, and I don't really not say it. So I'll just say if there's a story something, I'm like, well, that's ridiculous, and I'll just say it. And look, that probably will offend some people or what have you, and I understand it. I'm not going to not say it because I believe in being genuine, because that's what a podcast is about, being who you are, which is why we're doing this panel. But the response we got once from the guy on our show who is religious, I believe he said, Old Testament God was kind of an asshole. And, I mean, he destroyed the earth. Like hello, that's just true, right? So we got a letter from a person who called him a quote-unquote believer and how they weren't ever going to listen to the show again, and they were so offended. And he was like, I'm not saying everybody, I'm just saying, like, that's kind of funny. He was just making a joke. And I took time out on the show, as a person who doesn't believe any of it, to defend him. And it's like we get those kind of things, and I think there is a part of the box thing that you were talking about, which is, oh, you're black, you're supposed to talk about this, you're supposed to believe these things, and I think that happens with any minorities, with women especially. So we try to push back on that whenever we can, even though we talk about Marvel movies and what have you. We try to guide the conversations if we can into serious topics on sexism, racism, those sort of things, and we have a good time. But I think there certainly is those boxes that people put you in, and I've had people send me a message and said, "Oh, because ours is all audio." It's like, "Oh, I didn't realize you were black," which I always find to be funny. I'm like, I went to school. I'm sorry, but that's always kind of funny to me, and I get that, and I just kind of laugh it off, and I'm like, that's fine. I'm still going to talk about black issues. I don't ever back down from that.
That's the one thing.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was about to say, I know on our end, it's kind of weird because I think we put ourselves out as black podcast. Everybody had their own definition of what black is.
Yeah,
like, my spiritual belief is nebulous at the moment, and my partner is on kind of a metaphysics type of tip, but not on the extreme quote unquote hotep end. Yeah. And for people who see Facebook, y'all know how that steez goes, and all of that. And it's very weird because they expect him to be a sexist, and they expect me to be submissive, or vice versa, or that I don't know a certain thing about hip-hop music or whatever have you, and he knows everything. And then we have about a 5-year age difference, so there's a whole generational thing too. Like there's times we'll argue about a hip-hop thing throughout the entire show, and we'll do like a slight bit of political thing. They're like, oh, she told you to talk about that. I'm like, no, we're grown-ass adults. We can talk about whatever we want to, you know.
There's some shit isn't wrong, though. Like, when we first started, Blog Talk Radio was a huge thing for podcasting. And I say that because you could literally just click record and start running your damn mouth. And you didn't have anything to say. And people could just link in, oh, this show is on at 9. So my first experience with urban podcasts was on Blog Talk Radio. And I'm not afraid to say it, these were some of the most ghetto, hood. They would talk about things that just, girl, they got weed that's cheaper here than it is there. Or guys would talk about, I don't understand why women go out here and get these jobs. Ain't at home raising these babies. And they would actually talk like that. Ain't at home raising these babies. Like, what in the hell? The podcast that made me want to start a podcast was one ran by a bunch of pimps. And I am not joking. I am not joking.
What is the name of the show?
It's gone now. They've retired.
You can never retire from the game.
Yeah,
but they got pimp Social Security.
These guys, and that's actually how I started following like Chris and a bunch of other guys who podcast.
That's kind of
not because he's a pimp.
I would say you're letting people's information out. I ain't know about.
I went on like a tirade on Twitter. I was just quoting what these guys were saying on the podcast.
Oh shit, I remember that.
These guys were just the most atrocious, disgusting guys I'd ever heard. And to make it worse, they brought hoes onto the show to validify what they were saying. So they would say things like, because I ain't trying to have no, it was because matching lingerie was what set me off.
God, I remember that.
They said, I can't mess with no chick that don't have matching lingerie. How your bra brown, your panties black? And I was like, seriously? That's why you with her?
That's the line.
That's what it is? She got leopard skin and tiger skin, dog. That don't match. I was like, bruh. And I just started tweeting it. And the response from the women on Twitter was by far hilarious. Because they were, what are you listening to? No, you're lying. You're making this up. I'm definitely not. And then they had women come on to this podcast with these guys who had already berated women awfully. And then the women were going, yeah, I don't know what's wrong with those girls. You can buy them as a set. How your stuff get mismatched? I don't understand I'm so glad that show was gone, but I wish I had it still to play it because I feel like too many people think like that, and they don't voice it until they get pushed into a corner. And the real way they feel about men and women and society and like homosexuals and at this point transsexuals and race and education and everything else comes out. And you start to realize, who you may have been hanging around and who you may have been talking to. And that's why I like our podcast, because we don't always agree on everything, but when it comes down to what's right and what's wrong, I don't feel like there's a gray area with us on some things. Like, saying that women in general shouldn't work is wrong. If they want to work, that's fine. Saying that all black people are ghetto or all black people aren't educated, or they can't read, they don't talk well. That's not true. Saying that talking proper is white, that's not true. That's
that's something we fight. That's something we fight a lot on our network, actually.
And I never heard that until a podcast. I heard things like, I heard the opposite all through high school. Oh man, you talk proper. You're a nerd. You're this nerd culture now. Mm-hmm. It's being a huge thing.
It is the culture.
A huge thing. Mm-hmm. And back in the day, it was not cool to be a nerd. It's not cool to be a nerd. Now everybody wants to be.
Well, there's nothing nerdier than what we're doing right now.
Right.
Podcast.
It's literally not, hey, I have this esoteric knowledge about this topic. allow me to record it and send it out to the masses.
And
Surely someone will
listen
want to
through
hear it.
compressed audio through something called an RSS feed.
Yeah, like
through an
I mean, I don't.
because that's what cool girls and cool guys do.
Right.
I mean, that's always the ironic thing. It's like, oh, you podcast, you know, what's your podcast about? It's like, oh, it's about like nerds and film and stuff like that. It's like, oh, that's so dorky or whatever. I'm like, yeah, but you listen to Grantland on
Right.
ESPN. That's super nerdy.
You're the one that's on Facebook going, oh, so you see the new Avengers movie? It's like, yeah, well, if you listen to my podcast,
we
you
just
would.
talked about it for 2
Well,
hours.
you know what the funny thing for you is the Blog Talk Radio. For me, it was actually radio. Like, I used to listen to. If you're a fan of this, I'm sorry, but I used to listen to Rush Power Morning Show every morning.
Oh,
And
God bless
I would
you.
just
Okay.
get so annoyed by certain things they would do. Like, it would be annoying. Like, the line for me with the day, they did a payday loan. What was the payday loan one they used to do? It was
Rush cards?
I can't. No, it wasn't Rush Card. It was something. It was some payday loan company they did. They
Which might
played
well
that
be a
ad, and
payday
they
loan,
they had the host like reading. Hey, if you want to get a payday loan for you want to get your hair done, do this. And then after that was played, they went to interview Michael Moore about his new movie, which was about the financial collapse. And I'm just sitting there going, you guys have no idea what you just did. Like, you're promoting something that he's actually talking about, and there was like no connection in their brains about that. And I was like, that's black radio. Like, that was considered urban radio. That's what the black voices were. When people go and want to talk to somebody, like, again, if you listen to this guy on podcast, I'm sorry to hate this, Hip Hop Gamer. Like, that's an old school version of that where
The eye rolls. Lovely.
yeah, it's this guy that has these outdated views of what it is for every, like, he made this long, all of us have roasted him on this. He was going on about...
We've actually interviewed him on our show before.
Yeah, he was talking about Anita Sarkeesian. She did that video about like sexism in video games, and he went off about how she was wrong and there's no sex. I'm like, dude, he had no idea what he was talking about. But that kind of like that was radio. Like, that's urban radio. It's a bunch of guys, mostly guys, talking about stuff. They have no idea. They have not changed. They have no idea their own sex, their own misogyny, and the women who co-signed it, like, that was considered urban radio. So the way to break into that has been like podcasts, where we can now be like, listen, we're not stupid. Like, we're actually educated in the world. Like, the world moves too fast for like traditional radio, and we're able to keep up on that. Like, I'm listening to radio, I'm like, we talked about that last week. Like, you guys
Or
are
2 weeks ago.
Yeah, 2 weeks
in
ago.
greater detail than they did. Like,
Right.
I feel like one thing that's not discussed enough in media, and I hear it discussed all the time amongst our shows and the different networks, is rape culture. Like, rape culture is a huge thing, and people don't talk about it. You watch the news and you can see it there. You see it in films. You see it in day-to-day dialogue. You see it in people's presumptions of how you're supposed to carry yourself, or people ask certain questions. Like, I see it all the time. There are these memes that I get on my Facebook where they'll have like a woman in lingerie bent over in the kitchen, and they have like a text that says, your girl goes to work, her best friend slept over, you come out your bedroom to this. Do you hit it? And I'm thinking, no. Or do you ask first? What? Wait, why is this two-person decision based on one person? But to me, a lot of that, like the whole Bill Cosby thing, like that was, I lost a lot of friends over that incident, because there were a lot of people, well, how you just gonna keep taking the pills, or how you gonna let a man do this to you? That's your fault, or you shouldn't be wearing stuff like this around certain people, or you shouldn't go here or go there, instead of saying, hey, just don't rape.
Dude,
Well, I know for our show that was a whole thing, because we had people who were like really mad that a man and woman could actually agree that, hey, maybe you shouldn't rape women and drug them and do it for over 30-something years. But Bill made a different world than the Cosby Show. But it's like, but there's like, at least as of right now, like what, 50 plus women?
Something like that.
Who are there like that happen? Like, it's like one should be enough. But when these real stories started coming out, and it's just, they're like, you're getting mad at me for stating facts, like, the court papers have been out from early 2000 that he settled the case. And I'm sorry for anybody who might get offended at this. What man in their right mind would settle a case saying that they were a rapist? Much less one that had a whole bunch of money. And we had a lot of people really get mad on my Facebook page, on my Twitter, on private messages, because my Facebook page, like, if I don't check people, I'm blessed to have enough smart people on my page where they'll check other people. Shouts out to Brandon as one of them. And they'll get tore up, but they'll get into my private message and get mad, like, well, why you let this person talk to me like that? It's like, but y'all are adults. Yeah. I'm not supposed to handle certain stuff. I, as a media person, the media outlet, am supposed to put the opinion I feel free to do out there because my podcast is my podcast, my show is my show. And these are the type of things that we, are supposed to be able to go up front and be able to do. And that's why I brought up the entire question about how people want to try to put you into a box. Because it's almost, to me, it's like if you're doing entertainment, like for us, we get a lot of new music. We're blessed to get a lot of music service to us. They're like, wow, I like the music, but your commentary just kind of did. I was like, yeah, it's a whole package, though. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not supposed to be the, oh, well, I like Mary and John, I like Fusion and the Black Hawk when they play music, and otherwise, you're making me uncomfortable. Well, great media to me sometimes makes people uncomfortable. Right. It makes you question things. It brings up a conversation, and I think that's one of the great things about podcasting as a whole, as a medium, especially for people of color or underrepresented populations.
I just don't like that I had to be in Bill Cosby's defense because one time he played Heathcliff Huxtable for 8 seasons. I love that show. The last 2 seasons were trash. But I love that show, and I love the openers, and I think that show had a lot to give and a lot to show for diversity and culture and blackness and everything else. That character has nothing to do with what Bill Cosby does in the real world, and he's been doing annoying mess for the longest. So when this came out, I was just like, yeah, he's kind of arrogant anyway. He's not Heathcliff Huxtable, and that was the hardest thing to argue with people. It was like, he's not Heathcliff Huxtable. Huxtable is awesome.
I mean,
Bill
it's just
Cosby
kind of
not.
It's just kind of funny because I listen to a diverse amount of shows. Whether they are black shows, women-led shows and stuff like that, or white-led shows. What I find the most interesting is it seems that the black shows or minority-based shows tend to have more of an affinity for talking about the harder issues. Again, we do commentary on comic books or something like that. But, for instance, we had a huge dialogue. We had a huge dialogue the other day because they announced that they're doing a reboot of Ocean's 11 with an all-female cast. And, we're not afraid to talk about, we agree with it, do we not agree with it, here are the reasons or something like that. And the Bill Cosby thing, I think, is a good example because we're in a space, one, that allows us ultimate freedom. We can talk about whatever we want. Because we have that space, I think minorities tend to say, okay, well, fuck it. If they're going to let us do this, we're going to talk about whatever we want. And we go for it because we are already a niche market just because of the nature of who we are. But it's kind of nice because it's freeing in a way that you get to talk about whatever you want. You're never going to hear them maybe they make a joke about it, but you're never going to hear a long-form conversation on the Nerdist about whether or not rape culture is a thing. But on the Nerdpocalypse or on Where's My 40 Acres and stuff like that, you will hear that conversation, and it'll be unabashed.
Well, that's the funny thing. So, to tie into that, a couple of weeks ago, the Flash in the episode was Fury of the Firestorm. And I have been talking about for a while now, me and my co-host Deepam, 2 black guys, we're talking about, this is a blackish show on TV.
It is.
There's so many elements of blackness and the black family on there, and I've listened to people's reviews of that episode, and they'll never touch on it. They'll never touch on it because they don't see it. And I'm sitting there watching. Here, it's the idea of what a black father is has always been the Bill Cosby thing. The 2-family home. He's raised. It's all been perfect. That's really what the Cosby Show was. It was basically perfect. Nobody ever brought up anything about how the hell they make that money. What went on there. With Joe West, you have a black father. A black daughter. They're raising, Barry Allen, who's white. So basically, black fatherhood is the foundation of, the fastest man alive. And so many things of that character and what he does, like when Iris is mad at her mom when they find out her mom's still alive, and she was a former drug addict. So many people had issues with that, and we're wondering why she just didn't. Well, why was Iris so upset? Why didn't she do to them? Oh, you don't understand. I haven't talked to my mom in a year. That's okay. That's a reality for so many people, and that was something that a lot of other podcasts never touched on because they don't understand that thing. It's especially as black people, we're supposed to be, 2-family home, and if you're not, then something's wrong with you. That's a family raised by a single father who was a good father, and that's just a topic that nobody else really talks about.
Well, not only that, but it's it not only does it break against the two parent home thing, but the black family is the solid foundation for a white kid whose life is in shambles, which is completely the opposite of what you see on television.
Right. Like that episode, they actually had a little bit of respectability where, Jefferson Jackson was the mechanic, and then was it Henry Hewitt was the scientist. So they were trying to find a match, and they were like, well, the scientist is obviously going to be the guy. And Barry's like, well, what about this other guy? He seems like a good guy. And what nobody caught was when I watched how Grant Gustin like did those scenes, he got it, and part of me was like, oh, he got it because he raised up in a black family. Like, he understands that the respectability part, it's not something that's talked about very much. And so to me, I got that. A lot of other podcasts I was watching and reading and reviews I read or I listened to that talked about the episode didn't get that, but we could. And I think that's something that a lot of people, like, I don't label myself as a black podcast. I happen to be black. A lot of people, almost everybody contributing to my site is black. We just have to talk about things that everybody else talks about. But if there's a topic like race or sexism or homophobia or something like that, we're not going to be afraid to talk about that stuff because constantly we have to. I have to live that.
Yeah, we're talking to everybody.
Yeah.
It was funny because when you told me you wanted to set up this, and I was like, yo, I got to get Chris and I got to get Nerdpocalypse. We're all in the DC area, and I was like, yo, Mary, if you can make it happen, that would be amazing. Because I listened to a podcast called How Did This Get Made? And I'm not sure if a lot of people listen to it. It's an amazing podcast about films. I love it. It's awesome. I think it's Paul Scheer. I might have messed his name up.
Yeah, it's Paul Scheer.
Paul Scheer said in an episode, he said, well, podcasting is like the whitest thing ever. And as much as I love that show, when he said that hurt because I'm thinking, well, we've been podcasting since 2010. You were podcasting before us, bro. I was podcasting when we were. The Bomani Jones was doing radio type podcast shows out of with the little station in North Carolina.
The Black Book Awards have been 2008.
Yeah, those were since around 2008. That's around
I was like, when did it become?
Our era started.
Why is it white to podcast? Why is it white to have a voice and to get out there? Like, people listen to Sirius Radio, and there are a lot of black stations on Sirius Radio. That was really the only place for a while that you could get a diverse voice. It's still radio. They still can't say certain things. But podcasting was out here, and it's funny. I don't know what year it was, but it used to be you go, I have a podcast, and they go, what's a podcast? Mm-hmm. Now it's, I have a podcast. Oh, what's your podcast called? I'm not sure when that transition happened.
I think Serial is when that happened.
Yeah, it probably was.
I think Serial, and I think when NPR started doing their thing too, and what have you. Yeah.
Which is funny because
we picked up on Serial instantly.
And that's a crazy thing because I learned about Serial from a whole bunch of black people and Latino people. I don't remember anything about it. I live right around the corner.
I heard it. I told a friend. She told 20 friends. Next thing you know, we're having Facebook discussions about
I'm in a Facebook group with all black people.
What's going on?
That's the interesting thing about black podcasting and just black social media to begin with. Like, everybody knows about black Twitter and stuff like that. But and I went on a rant about this last week when I found out about the podcast. I mean, the panel. It wasn't time for this, but I was noticing something. Me, he helps me with movie trailer reviews, and we're always going to. We've done San Diego Comic-Con. I've done D23. I've done New York Comic-Con. Like, we do these things as press. Like, we get press access. We go and we do these. One thing I've noticed is, like, black people set a trend in a lot of things. Like, we'll set trends on, like, Rod from the Black Guy Who Tips, one of our close personal friends on this. He's got a huge podcast out there. He started the hashtag Dim Thrones for live tweeting Game of Thrones. Nobody from HBO has ever hit them up about doing anything for them.
And it's a trend every single time that show is on.
Every time Game of Thrones does.
Like, worldwide trend.
We review Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. We review The Flash. Like, when I see these hashtags, it's always, a bunch of, diverse people there. But when you go to these press rooms to see people actually getting into press room, getting press access and things like that, they're not diverse. And that's the kind of thing that happens all the time. Like, people love having us as consumers for this, for consumers for podcasts, for consumers for TV and for media. But when it comes time to actually give us the seat at the table to, like, do the interviews, do recognize that, hey, like, we've been listening to Serial too. Like, that it almost never happens. Like, you have to rush to get that.
And in a weird way, I'm just going to hop on that real quick. Then I see the hands are, which means we're doing an awesome job. We can get some questions going on. I think this also transitions to the wonderful title that we've had, which somehow everything gets into a circle. Not all podcasts are white. Not all people who listen to podcasts are white. And like any form of media, like whether it was TV back in the day, radio back in the day, the podcasting back in the day, I find it interesting that it seems that the second a lot of regular people start laying down the foundation is when other folks want to try to go ahead and take it over and make it seem like it was their thing or it's something.
Columbus.
Columbusing via broadband. That is absolutely correct. Because I mean, for somebody like me, when I back in the day was just there like, oh, we're starting a podcast. You can go listen to a show through a computer. What type of geeky shit is that? That's weird. Internet radio, ew. Now it's just there like, so... Mary, now what type of USB mic should I get in? How do you get music? And it's just they're like, okay, there, guys. Like I remember doing a music show and a hip hop show. Like it was a geeky thing to do a hip hop podcast. Apparently, you were a nerd who never went out into the world. And you only listened to like Eric B and Rakim taped in your home all day and whatever else. And now all these big guys who I remember, even when they were doing the blog thing, like Rap Radar and all them. I'm going to name people. I don't care. We're doing stuff. They were talking about that podcast. We're geeky dorky. I'm like, now all of y'all have podcasts. Like this is a new media that has a very exciting place in terms of having just a lot of different voices to be able to put their stuff out there and do their thing. And events like this with DC Podfest, shout out to Jennifer, who I see in the corner, who set up this wonderful event and everything. We get to get more of our voices out there and build with more people who want to do media and make media a bigger, greater thing that's actually a true voice for the people, not this big corporatized nonsense that's going on right now, which was one of the reasons why I started my show back in the day. I went to Rutgers and Hot 97 was starting to get on the really garbagey side of things. And I'm like, I can do better. And I've been blessed enough to be able to do this for a big period of time. So I definitely want to thank everybody for being here and attending this. And I see people with their phones up, so I'm hoping that we're getting some video and periscoping and all that good stuff. And I saw some hands up. I know we had a wireless mic somewhere, but worst come to worst, I'll attach this joint and we can try to get some questions there if that's cool.
Let them project.
Okay, go ahead and project.
Use your outside voices.
Oh man,
good movie.
Okay,
Tell them about the Phenom method.
The Phenom method.
Oh yes, I've seen the Phenom method quite a bit.
All right, so we do Comic-Con. We've done New York Comic-Con 3 or 4 times now. I've done San Diego Comic-Con once, and I got into photography because I started podcasting and going to music festivals, and I got to interview artists and I got to take pictures of them performing, and that was amazing for me. I got to meet some of my favorite people as well. When we go to these events, and he touched on this earlier, you don't see a very diverse, like if they have a Supergirl forum, they're not going to let Where's My 40 Acres in. They're not going to let movie trailer reviews maybe in because they don't know. We're not Getty Images. We're not Forbes. We're not Rolling Stone. We're not Fox. So they don't let us in. And I'm probably exposing myself, but the Phenom method is I got a big camera. I'm going to walk in. And there were a couple of times where they would come out and they would call in all of these huge name media sources. And I'm like, hey, man, we drove 4 hours to get here, too, or we took a 5-hour flight from D.C. to San Diego. If Rashida Jones is here with TBS, I'm going to get a picture of Rashida Jones. That's to me to be like, oh, we only want these people, as if they can write better things than we can about things. They don't even post the videos.
They don't do video. They don't do any of this stuff.
Pictures. They don't post the videos. It's a waste of space to have these people in here who are not as in love with the culture as we are, and we work so hard to get there, and then it's, well, we don't know your name, so we not gonna let you in.
You're not on the list.
And I'm like, look, I got a $2,000 lens on this camera. I came correct. I'm gonna take pictures proper. And it was a couple times he turned around, he was like, yeah, where'd Brandon go? I walked in.
Yeah, he already walked in.
I walked into X-Files.
Yeah.
And took pictures of David Duchovny in it because, I love the show and I'm glad Fox is bringing it back. I would have walked. My favorite show that I missed was Mr. Robot. I wanted to walk into Mr. Robot so bad because I love like the direct creator of Mr. Robot is amazing. Like he's got another movie on Netflix called Comet is amazing. He does such good work, and I wanted to walk in there, but I held it back and I didn't just walk in because it was a huge show there.
It's just don't take no for an answer. I mean that's really
Yeah.
what it is. Yeah. They're going to tell you no. Sometimes you got to do it anyway. I mean that's what we've been getting around to doing is just go. I mean just do like and sometimes it's more work. Like right now. I've realized that, hey, sometimes the topics I talk about on the Insanity Check might be too much for some people who just want to hear my views on reviews. So now I've separated the feeds. So now if you just want to hear us talk about The Flash and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., go to another feed, you got that there. You might still have some stuff about race, but you can avoid some of the more heavier topics on Insanity Check. It's finding ways to kind of try to sneak people around into getting them into thinking about you and letting you in. Like I said, we walked into Supergirl, and I ended up getting the VP from WB's card. So I was like, all right, I asked for it, So
I definitely think you need a mix of both. Like you could definitely do the bum rushing because I've done that before, and you definitely have to sometimes just they're like, look, I can play your game, and I can play it better than you do. Mm-hmm. Well, what do you do? I do this. What about here's all my stats? Here's my top 5 countries where we're listened to. Yep. Here's my download things from whatever. Oh, I have a blog. Check out my blog. It's been around for 8 years. Like, you really can't play me out unless you just don't want me there. Well, I think sometimes they expect that if you're a quote-unquote minority podcast that you aren't going to have your business together.
Right. Like, for me, I play sort of the infiltration game, more the spook who sat by the door. Good movie, by the way. So, like, for us, we use our most popular show, Black on Black Cinema, to do that, where it's sort of a head fake, right? It's like, oh, it's a podcast about black films and it's long form and everything else. That's all great. So it's like, hey, black people, come listen to, more detailed information about movies that you know and movies that you don't know. But the thing is, what has ended up happening, unbeknownst to us at first, was we started getting a lot of white listeners, weirdly, like overseas, because they have no exposure. And, I have some white friends who listen to the show, and they're like, you do know we don't get a chance to listen to 4 black men talk about things just completely unfiltered. Because it's just 4 of us in a room. So it's not like there's a white person like, make sure you say this, So we just say whatever we want to say, and people, the reason why I call it a head fake is because you come to listen to Coming to America, us talk about that, but what you leave with is, oh, I never saw The Spook Who Sat by the Door. Oh my God, that movie is so real. Holy shit, it's still real today. I can't believe, and I'm going to go see that. I mean, anytime we did a movie review of the famous Western, pardon my language, but that's the name of the movie, Boss Nigger, and we had white folks like, wow, this movie, I've never heard of this. I can't believe it's called that. I can't believe they made this movie, and here are the reasons why I enjoyed it. That's a way to do a head fake for black folks to pull them into seeing or listening to something that maybe they wouldn't have normally, and for white folks to give them an insight into this is what black people are really thinking. We had, just quickly, like during the Baltimore Uprising, which we're out of Baltimore, we recorded, we were watching it all in the news, and all 4 of us got on and recorded just an unfiltered talk about it. And it made it onto AV Club's Podmass and everything like that. And we had Patton Oswalt retweet that episode. He was like, oh my God, this is something to really listen to. But it was a perspective of 4 black guys talking about it, live in this area. I mean, where I live was like 10 minutes from where it was happening. Like, that's not something you're ever going to hear on, I hate to keep breaking up the Nerdist, it's just like the widest podcast I can think of. But like, you're never going to hear that on NPR show or something like that. It's going to be filtered, it's going to be cut and sliced to be the least offensive. Yeah, we said that the mayor of Baltimore looked like Terrell Suggs. We just said it because we were angry and she hadn't shown up in 3 hours.
And she kind of does.
And she kind of does. But we just said those things, and there's a lot of other
indie media is where authenticity is. Right. It ain't gonna be safe all the time.
I think we're done now.